kick off then. So look, welcome everybody to the inaugural EQ AI podcast. I'm delighted to have my first guest here, Mr. Greg Creed. Greg is the ex-CEO of Young Brands and current board member at Delta, Whirlpool and Aramark. And Greg and I have not known each other that long, but we've pretty much hit it off straight away, didn't we, Greg? And I think you were quite passionate about this topic.
Very much, we hit it off, which is pretty good for an Aussie and a Pommy to sort of hit it off straight away.
Exactly, yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think the importance of culture, the importance of people and leadership has always been critical to me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I mean, look, today we're just going to dive into a few areas about you in your early years, if you don't mind, and a bit about, how leadership is transforming in this very technology-driven world we're in. But look, this to be the real Greg, unfiltered. I want to get to know you, who shaped you to be who you are today, good or bad, and we'll take it from there. So look, let's start at the beginning, right? Let's look at the human behind who Greg is here. What was that sort of defining early moment that really shaped you as a leader? And what was that sort of fork in the road moment for you?
It's funny. I think I was never like the smartest kid in the class. And in all honesty, so I wasn't the smartest kid in the class of like 35, so I'm hardly going to be the smartest kid in the class of 200 in the grade.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I was always chosen to be either, and I wasn't, by the way, the best rugby player. I wasn't the best cricketer. I wasn't the best soccer player, but invariably I got asked to captain the team.
Yeah.
And in year 12 in high school, I got asked to be the school captain, and so. It was clearly not for my intelligence. That was why no one was asking me to do it for my intelligence. And in fact, sometimes the people are the best at, whether it's rugby, cricket, work, it doesn't matter what it is, aren't always the best leaders. For some reason, the guys, mostly because I played, sport, were like, we want Greg to be the captain of the team. And I guess they saw something that I could bring the best out of the team, even though I was never the best player on the team.
Yeah.
And so I guess I had those early days, and I enjoyed the responsibility. It wasn't like I didn't enjoy the responsibility. And even later life, the joke in the family is, God, don't give him a microphone and put him in 1,000 people because he's in his happy place. So I think the things that a lot of people either don't like or uncomfortable with are just things that I've always felt incredibly comfortable with from an early age. And so I was lucky that my mates asked me to captain these teams, and I was school captain. And I think the other thing for me is I've always had this attitude of anything I work in, it's not life and death, right? I mean, I worked at Unilever, which are huge obviously in the UK and Europe and everywhere else, and then I worked at PepsiCo and Yum. And my feeling is your job is just to get the best out of people. And you can't be an expert or great at everything. So I think the other thing is just be vulnerable. I think one of the things that leaders lack, and I'm going to be a bit pushy, but Americans are really not good at being vulnerable. But I think personal vulnerability is really good, because two things happen. One, you can, I'll be honest, I'm terrible at process. Okay, I am not the process person.
You're good with technology, though. We've just seen that earlier, right?
Oh, yes, exactly, yeah. Well, I'm actually worse at, I've now realized that I thought, process was my worst skill. Now technology is my worst skill. But in all seriousness, like when I've moved around, because I've lived in Sydney and London and New York and Sydney and Orange County and Dallas and all this. Invariably, I'd get up and say, hi, I'm Greg. I'm from Australia. I'm not really good at process. I'm the world's worst speller. And the HR team wanted to tackle me off the stage and say, you can't say that stuff, right? And my point was, yes, because first of all, I'm not good at it.
Yeah,
I am actually a terrible speller. The joke in the family is our 5-year-old grandson spells better than I do. But the other side of that is I'm pretty good, I think, at creating ideas. I'm good at strategy and I'm good at math. If I just get up and I go, hey, I'm Greg, and I'm really good at strategy, creative ideas, and math, they're going to think, who's that egotistical maniac?
Yeah.
So I think this ability to be vulnerable basically enables people to emotionally connect with you.
Yeah.
And secondly, it makes sure that on my teams, I've got people that have the skills. Spelling doesn't matter, obviously, but I need process people on my team or nothing is going to happen. And so...
I mean, let's take that back to the early days, though. So obviously you've done all that in the big corporate world, but when you said your mates wanted you to be captain, you became the school captain. Do you think you had already developed that whether consciously or subconsciously, that element of empathy and that ability to make people feel good and be in that vulnerability? Did you show that, or is this something you grew into?
No, I think it's there. In fact, my family's saying I'm too generous.
Right.
Honestly, I mean, if you ask my wife or my kids, they would say I'm too generous, either with my time or with helping people. And again, I don't want to come. This sounds a bit egotistical, right? So please, we're just being honest.
Yeah.
So I don't want anyone to think, I've got some halo on my head, because that's just not who I am. But yeah, I think I'm a big believer in EQ, emotional intelligence, and I'm a big believer in taking the time to connect with people. And just because I'm the boss doesn't make me in any way superior or better than any other human being. And I spent a lot of my time. I always knew, like, the security people in the office. I always knew the people who were cleaning the office. And I think that's just basic humanity.
Yeah. And look, I know this is probably going to go on the unpopular trend, but look, obviously I now sold my business to an American firm, and there was a fear to it because there is a stigma, should we say, about American firms and culture. But I think behind the veil there is great humanity and great humility. But would you say it's fair in your experiences in companies that are based there that it isn't obvious to show that as a strength?
Yeah, you've got to drag it out of them. You're right. They're the most generous people on the planet. And if you even look at, like, how much everyone donates to philanthropy, they're incredibly generous. But for some reason, they don't feel comfortable being vulnerable as a leader. And so it's almost like you got to tease it out of them. And, and I think I think some of it's cultural.
Yeah.
I think Australians are laid back. What you see is what you get. We call a spade a shovel, all that sort of stuff, right? And so I think part of it is just my cultural upbringing, growing up in Australia. But you're right. I found that everyone I've worked with in America, they have a huge heart. They have humanity. For some reason, they almost want to show the tougher, rougher side of them in order to be respected. And I'm like, but in a funny way, it's probably helped me, because I've spent like 30 years working in the US. And I think that when you can display the humanity that they have comfortably and naturally, I think that's probably helped me, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd agree with the same. It's added more depth to my leadership and my sort of style now, having worked for an American company, for sure. So, I mean, without dwelling too much in the American side, I mean, what would you, going back to the sort of, not necessarily the earliest years, but was there any one particular person or mentor, or even more important than a mentor, was there a personal experience that happened to you that made you sit and reflect and think, I need to show up differently here, or this is going to be a moment in my life that will create a different path for me?
Yeah. So David Novak, who was my boss for many years when I was, back when I was in Australia at KFC, then Taco Bell as CMO, and they're running it. David had a great line, which is, what got you here won't get you there. And so what he was basically telling me is, I couldn't just, continue to be the nice guy that, people warm to. And, I had to develop other skills as well in order to sort of get to the next level. And the question was how to develop those skills without losing your humanity. And so, David was very big on drive. By the way, David Novak, another great leader. You need to interview him.
Hang on, I'll just write that down 1 second.
Yeah, he is. He is the one who created the recognition culture at Yum, which I really just tried to build on. But David was always good at drive for results. And I think the thing that I needed to do was, yes, develop strategy. Yes, get the empathy and the people aligned. But there are sometimes you just got to push them over the line. It's sort of like that sort of stuff. So, like everybody, we've all got skills to learn. And but what I appreciated was his honesty, which was, look, the skills you've got, which was sort of, I think the leadership to some extent is natural. Yes, you can improve your EQ and all that sort of stuff, but and he was like, those skills have been really helpful. They've got you to this. I mean, I was a chief marketing officer at 33 or something, and he's like, they've served you well, but if you want to be a president and a CEO one day, it was really two things. One, drive for results. And secondly, you need to have a broader perspective of the business than just be a great marketer. And so he said, he made me the chief operating officer of Yum. I learned to run restaurants. He sent me off to do I call it the finance course for marketing, marketing people at Stanford. And so, he was so instrumental in
Mm.
filling out these things that when was I ever going to run restaurants? No. Am I going to be the financial genius? No.
Mm.
But I learned enough to apply then my creativity to those areas.
Yeah.
I'll give you a good example. One of the guys on the team who was running the international business of Yum made this presentation I sat into by a company called Rostix, which was a chicken chain in Russia. And it had like 200 stores. And over time, they turned it from Rostix to KFC, and then to KFC. And obviously now don't need to talk about Russia. But I came out of that meeting and I said to David, I think I'm pretty creative, but I could not have my creativity was in the brand building and marketing and that sort of customer experience space. It wasn't in the, I would never have thought about, let's go buy a 200 unit chain in Russia and convert it. And so I also went to David and said, that's why I went off to Stanford to do this thing. Cause I even myself, I realized I needed skills that I inherently just didn't have because I'd never been asked to do it.
That's interesting. So it's quite experience-based awareness as well, made you realize you have to invest in yourself as well. And that's a common theme, right? I think when it comes to EQ, are you born with EQ or do you learn it?
I think you're born with it, but I think you can get better at it.
I like that response because I think the easy option was you to say is to learn it, to give everyone hope. But I do think there's some truth in the fact that there is a DNA of you either born with it, but you can either really harness it to become something special. And I also think that even if you're not born with it in spades, you can still get to a base level where you're effective, right?
I agree. I think I used to teach a class called Inspiring Others to Fuel Results because I believe everyone can be a more inspiring leader than they are. Doesn't mean going to turn them into Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
But so I think the same with EQ. I think everyone's got EQ.
Yeah.
EQ is something that some people have got more or less than others. Equally, some people have got more IQ than others, right? If you think about it, the challenge with IQ is, I've been told, I'm not an expert, is your IQ is sort of like your IQ. It doesn't matter how many books you read.
Yeah.
But your EQ you can dramatically improve your EQ.
Yeah.
Equally, I think you can dramatically improve how inspiring you are as a leader. And I think, I'm a big believer in leader as teacher, which is your job as the leader isn't just to lead the organization, but it's to teach the organization so that when you leave it, it's in better shape than when you found it.
So let's take this into a practical solution. So let's look at a time where EQ or lack of it, really changed a business outcome for you.
Boy, that's a really good question. I think it was, I think the answer is a lot of people, if they are given the sort of creative, moniker, think they always have to be creative. What I learned was sometimes your role is to champion other people's creativity.
Interesting.
And so when you say to the organization, we need to be more creative, the creative and extroverts go, oh, this is awesome, and the non-creative introverts go, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare, right? But so I'll give you the story. So there was a lady called Lois Carson, and she worked in the food innovation team at Taco Bell. I was the chief marketing officer, and we were trying to make the classic taste of Taco Bell more portable. That's what we were chasing. So she came to me, she gives me a phone call one day and says, hey, you want to come down to the test kitchen? I got something I'd like to show you. So I wander on down. And what she shows me is, and your UK visitors the guests may not know this, but it's a thing called Crunch Wrap, which is sort of like a hexagon shaped, take a tortilla and wrap it into a hexagon. Anyway, it's probably it probably does $1 billion a year at Taco Bell. Anyway, I go, oh my God, this is like awesome. This is like, wow. And I go, like, when did you have this idea? Thinking, this morning driving to work or in the shower. And she goes, you're the 4th chief marketing officer I've shown it to.
Oh, really?
and that was a big aha moment for me, which was that she'd had this idea, and it was a brilliant idea, by the way, but she didn't have the power to champion it herself. She wasn't in a position. And so I love telling the story because everyone goes, oh, well, you invented Crunch Wrap. No, Lois Carson invented Crunch Wrap. My job was to champion her idea because I had positional power and she had the idea. And so I tell this story because I think a lot of people go, well, I'm not creative. Yeah, you may not be creative, but are you the person with positional power that you can help take creative ideas and get them through the organization? So that for me was a big aha. Is it emotional intelligence? Maybe, but the question is, why did the 4 previous CMOs? Maybe because it wasn't their idea.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. But what you said there that stood out was it's your job to empower others and put them on
Yeah,
stage rather than you taking the credit, right? And I think that's a big
absolutely.
part of it. And especially, I see people that may want to take the credit, but if they can't follow it through to the end because they may get found out, they may not go for it, right? And I think that's the
Yeah.
point, is trusting other people's expertise.
Yeah, and what it also means is there's so many ideas out there in an organization. So the aha moment for me was both that I think you're right. I think the previous CMOs, because it wasn't their idea, didn't want to champion
Yeah.
the idea, because then someone would say, well, why didn't you have it?
Mm.
The other thing was, how many other Crunchwrap ideas do we have in the organization
Yeah.
that if we unleash? So the reason I used to tell this story profusely was to say, if anyone else has got any big ideas out there, would you, please bring them up.
Yeah.
And so that anyone in the organization was empowered to have ideas, and anyone in authority or, was empowered to try to make them bigger.
So look, we're going to go off tangent a bit here, but you've just hit on a point that I'm particularly passionate about. So people talk about entrepreneurial flair and giving people safe spaces and comfort zones to be themselves and
Right.
really think really innovative and try something new. But unfortunately, especially in corporate, there is this fear of failure with your peers and your leadership, that if you try something and get it wrong, it's going to knock you back a few years in your progression. And I think there's far too many executives that are still successful, but they play it a little safer than perhaps they'd want to because they don't want to make that one mistake. I mean, what's your view or message, should we say, more importantly, to current CEOs and executive teams around how to promote and foster a environment of safety around being okay to fail?
Well, the first thing is, you don't innovate on Thursday afternoons between 2 and 5. That does not create an innovative growth culture. The culture has to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are an innovation machine. It was very funny when I ran Taco Bell. I said we're not a food company, which everyone thought we were. I said we're a marketing company that happens to sell food.
Right.
And I think saying that to the organization, which was, we need to think like a marketing company. We just happen to be marketing, Mexican-inspired food.
Yeah.
But we're not your classic, marketing, food company that people sort of think about. So I think it's also about reframing things in people's minds. When I was at Unilever, I was the category director for bar soaps. So that was Dove and Caress. We launched Lever 2000, Lifebuoy, Lux, all this sort of stuff, right? Well, if you're the category director for bar soaps, what do you do when you come to work? You do bar soaps. I went to my boss one day and I said, I think we need to be category director personal wash. And personal washing, because we had realized people were starting to wash with shower gels and liquids and stuff. Right? So I think also just framing it up for the organization to think differently. So bar soaps, I make bar soaps. Personal wash, I can use many ways. Another way to get, I think, growth is when I went to Taco Bell, which had not been performing well back in the late 90s, everyone's like, oh, we got a 70 share of Mexican. Well, if you got a 70 share of anything, no one thinks you're going to get a 71 share, because most people would die to have a 70 share, right?
Yeah.
And so there was sort of this like, well, we've been declining for 7 years, and yet we have a 70 share.
Yeah.
And so I reframed that as we have a 2.6 share of the total category.
That's very clever. Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I said to people, so for every $100 spent in fast food, we get $2.60. Then I said to them, our goal is to get to $4.
Yeah.
Which mathematically is a 50% increase.
Yeah.
But if you say to someone, I want you to go, if I said to someone, we want to grow the business 50%, they go, well, you're a lunatic. If you say to them, I want to grow from $2.60 to $4 out of every $100, it doesn't sound such a lunatic.
The way you frame it is important. Yeah. No, I get that. And sorry,
so I think framing things up in a way that unlocks growth, and back to the earlier point, which is, my joke was, what's the worst, if I fail, what's the worst someone's going to do to me? Well, they're going to send me back to Sydney. Well, that's not even a threat. Like, most people, that would be, they've won the jackpot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's true.
I think I was honestly like, look, there are life and death businesses. I've never been in one of them.
Yeah.
Doctors and pilots and, all that.
Yeah.
That's, but, I was selling, soap and detergent and chicken and tacos. It's not life and death.
No, I get that.
And I think I think this, I wrote a book when I retired called Red, co-wrote it with another great guy, and it's relevant, easy, and distinctive. And I think as a leader, you also need to be relevant, easy, and distinctive.
Mm.
Relevant, you have to have the relevant skills. So I had to go out and learn those skills. I think easy is like easy to get on with. People want to be, they want to work with you, but you also have to be distinctive as a lead. What makes you distinctive? In my case, I think it was, yes, I'm an Australian. So if I'm in England or I'm in America, I'm not like everybody else. But I think it's also, there's little things like I used to say to people, everyone goes to a meeting with preparing the answers they know they're going to get. Most people don't go to a meeting with what's the really smart question I'm going to ask.
Yeah, that's very clever. Yeah. And so going back to that CEO's piece and the advice there. So the vulnerability piece with CEOs, I mean, you're on boards, you probably and most likely coach numerous CEOs. I mean, what would be your biggest advice to a CEO that privately would tell you they fear vulnerability, but they would never want to show that in a broader organization? Like, how could you get a CEO that you know's got it within them to be open enough to give that a go, you know?
My advice has always been start small, don't boil the ocean, right? So don't get up in front of the whole organization and just pretend you're now going to be vulnerable. Start with your executive team.
Right.
Start with the people that are closest around you and start sharing things which, you and I might not consider vulnerable, but that person would. So start where you've got a very safe environment. And if that goes well, expand it to, maybe the top 50 leaders in the organization and then expand. So, because the other thing is if you get up one day and you've not been Mr. Vulnerable or Mrs. Vulnerable and you get up in front of 1,500 people and go, well, here I am, they're going to call BS because it's not genuine.
Yeah, that's true. And look, I'm not going on to technology to try and catch you out here, but in terms of like, you think about channels for communication and, just getting jobs done now, you've got WhatsApp, you've got Teams, you've got Slack, you've got email. I mean, how much do you think layering technology that's meant to create productivity, whether it's AI or even more traditional tech, could actually be just heightening the real issue around the culture or the personality of an executive?
I think you have to be omnipresent. I think you have to be comfortable in every channel where you can influence the organization. And so, we did, we would do, like everyone, we had calls after earnings calls. We would do stuff where we would dress up like silly people for Thanksgiving. We did the I'm having a senior moment, Yellow Brick Road, the lion, the top, the whatever.
Wizard of Oz,
So I basically, from the Wizard of Oz. So the four of us.
Which one were you?
I was the lion, which was funny.
Of course, I put you more as the Tin Man was going to be my guess,
But... no, I was a lion because it was the biggest costume. That was
right. Okay, I'm with you now. Yeah, that's good.
And it was funny because David Gibbs, who succeeded me, was the Tin Man, and there's this funny photo of David not being happy, and then someone quoted, "The Tin Man's not happy right now." But I think this being able to make fun of yourself is all a part of. And so to answer your question, sometimes I got other executives to have to play along with what my vulnerability, which also forced them to be vulnerable. And so sometimes it's like, don't let them do it as an individual. It gets tough. If you can do it as a team and you can drag them along and they see that it's genuine and they're doing it with you. They're not like the Lone Ranger, right?
It's no different to who's going to be first on the dance floor when someone starts dancing and you dance with them. It's exactly like that, right? I get that. And look, you've got a job to do at the helm of the company. If you create that safe space to be silly and have a bit of playfulness, then they're going to do it as well, right? And that's an important point. So let's quickly flip to the top end of companies. Let's talk about specifically the boardroom and how boards work. What does boardroom humanity mean to you? If I said that word, you're sitting in a board meeting, you're all there, you've all got opinions, you're all there for a reason, you're paid for a reason, you've been selected for a reason. But what does actual boardroom humanity mean to you? If I gave you that phrase.
Boardroom humanity means if I was to ask the question, what comes first, employees, customers, sales, or profit? What's the answer? And the answer has to be employees. And I think in a lot of boardrooms, I've been really fortunate in the boardrooms I'm in, and the CEOs that I'm on boards of, that I would say employees have always been first. And I don't think that's the case. And I think in some boardrooms,
you don't think it's the case that every board member feels that this is just a personal passion for you?
No, I think on some boards, the board in total doesn't feel that.
Right.
I think in some boards the CEO doesn't feel that. But I think on the great boards, the vast majority of people on the board believe it starts with the employee. One of my favorite quotes is, the customer experience will never exceed the team member experience.
Yeah.
And I think I'll give you an example. So at Delta, Ed Bastian, a brilliant CEO, having run a business, I thought my business was complicated. Trust me, running a global airline is way more complicated.
Yeah.
But here's a little thing that people don't understand. Most people don't understand that the pilots and the flight attendants get paid from when the door closes to when the door opens. The most stressful time in the flight is actually boarding the plane. Delta is the only company, I think others may have caught up with us now, but Ed was the first CEO to pay flight attendants to board the plane.
Interesting.
Now, that to me demonstrates that, he understands that's a stressful thing. It may not be part of a contract, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have humanity. And he also realizes that, why is the NPS score and customer experience for Delta better than United and American by, 15 to 20 points? Because the team members feel a part of it. We have an employee profit sharing. Last year, this is where he's also clever, we gave out $1.4 billion. Everyone got 10% of their salary. Wow. But Ed, he does it on Valentine's Day. He's not a silly man. He does it on Valentine's Day. And so I think, but equally from a customer experience, during COVID, we were the only airline that sort of no one sat in the middle seat in coach, right? So his humanity isn't just for the employees. His humanity is for the customer, but it starts with the employees. And if you asked the John Zillmer at Aramark, Mark Britzer at Whirlpool, and Ed Bastian at Delta, if you ask them to answer the question, what is the order of sales, profit, customers, and employees, all three of them would say employees first.
Really? That's amazing.
And they genuinely not only mean it, but they act accordingly.
Yeah. And look, I don't want you to quote the company here, but there must have been a situation like this. So talk me through a moment of dissent or lack of courage in a boardroom that particularly stood out for you.
I think, what, I'm going to say it in the context of franchisees. Now, they're not exactly a board, but, they're sort of like when you're the CEO of a company that is largely franchised, they have a franchise. They used to have a franchise board that I had to work with. Well, didn't have to work with it. I actually enjoyed working with it. But there were times when I honestly sort of said to them, look, I think we're going out of humanity and into it's all about the money and it's not about the people. Yeah. And, there were some pretty tough conversations. And so I haven't really found it in a boardroom. I've been blessed that I haven't found it in a boardroom. But there's definitely times. There's also times just in your own company when you're running the business when people are like, well, we need to make this number and we need to do this and we need to do that. We need to do this. We need to make a shitload of money and stuff. And you go, yeah, we do, but not at the expense of, putting the employees and what we'll call it humanity first, right? Yeah. And then sometimes I think CEOs don't realize the power they've got. I mean, coming from Australia, which has much more social benefits than obviously the US, I think when I was at Young, we had like 6 or 7 weeks maternity leave, or it's called disability leave. What a stupid name, disability leave for having a baby. Anyway, that's the law.
Really?
It's called disability. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Anyway, so with my CHRO, Tracy Skeens, amazing woman, we were sitting down one day and I said, this is not good enough. And she's like, well, guess what? We can do whatever the hell we want to do. Don't even need board approval. Yeah. So, I think we took it from 6 to 16 weeks. We added paternity leave for 7 weeks. We added it whether you're adopting or, doing IVF or whatever the hell you were doing. And I think sometimes CEOs don't realize that they don't have to go to the board for everything. Yeah. And that the decision to improve maternity benefits and paternity and everything else, it cost me like $1 million a year. We're making billions. Yeah. And so then the ability of, and what was even more powerful, this what's really made my day is I had women who had lived under the previous, you only get 6 weeks regime. Yeah. They didn't come up to complain because, mostly women obviously having babies could get 16 weeks. They came up to say it's a great thing.
That's brilliant.
And that to me was the humanity of the organization, because a lot of people go, well, I only got 6 weeks and why should I get 16? Every woman who did come up to me to talk about it said, I'm so happy that
Yeah.
as an organization, we are going to do this
Yeah.
for, and so that to me that's when you know you've built a great culture.
That's
when it's not
impact,
about,
right? And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I bet that was more meaningful to you when you look back on your career today to close in a 5 billion acquisition that became the best profit ever. Do you know what I mean?
Oh God, yeah. Look, when I ran Taco Bell, it was like a baby factory.
Right.
And I think it was because we were doing well.
Yeah.
We finally were performing well. We had a great culture. People weren't worried about their job. They weren't worried about their career. They weren't worried about their pay packet. And the joke was, what the hell have we got in the water in Irvine? Because, but that to me was the sign of great culture.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, never thought
Yeah.
about it like that. That's amazing. And look, I'm conscious of time. We're going to wrap
Yeah.
up soon, but just let's dig into AI. I
Yeah.
know obviously it's not been around for most of your career, but you're very aware of it, and I'm sure it's come up on boards as well. So I've got a few quick questions to ask
Sure.
on it. So what do boards discuss now around AI through the lens of people and how it affects jobs and creation or elimination of jobs, and also how you're going to manage your culture through it?
I would say most of it is about how is AI a companion, not a replacement. So I'll give you a great example. I went to a Taco Bell in Dallas the other day. I've had nothing to do with it for a long time, and I knew it was AI taking the order. Right, I could just tell. So I tried to complicate my order just to give it a go, and I got to the drive-through window, and I said to the young lady that was there, I said, "Did AI take my order?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "What do you think about it?" She goes, "I love it." And I said, "Why do you love it?" She goes, "Because instead of me having to input the order, I'm actually getting the drinks ready and the food's already underway." So that to me that's AI making people's lives better, or the work experience better. Look, I'm not saying that there won't be some jobs that'll be lost to AI.
Yeah.
But I think that in the boards that I'm in, the discussion is around how do we use AI to either make the team member experience better, the customer experience better. That is literally where the discussion is occurring around.
Yeah.
How do I make both of those experiences better?
You can't blame a board for wanting to look at productivity because profit is profit. But I guess, it's a bit like even going back to more simple technology when computers were invented, right? It's that they were still used to the advantage. But where I worry, and I'm interested to get your take here, I think people that are more senior in their career that are already influencing more by business partnering relationships, you can't replicate it as easily. But if you think about lots of entry-level roles, whether it's an entry-level engineer, whether it's a researcher, whether it's an associate at a professional services firm, if you're a 20-something-year-old now, smart as anything, the world at your feet, but you're looking at this revolution, two questions, what mindset do you need to take into the workforce now as a young, talented person? And secondly, on the other end of the scale, as a CEO or CHRO, how do you have to show up to these people to make sure that you're creating succession planning? If these jobs are gone, who's going to become the future leaders, right?
Yeah. Well, I think disruption I've always loved disruption because it's a chance for you to shine.
Right.
So whenever a disruption occurs in whether it's computing, whether AI, it doesn't matter. Anytime there's a disruption, it's an opportunity to either personally shine, demonstrate you can not only live and survive, but sort of thrive in this new area. At the same time, I think it's also a way to disrupt, the market leader may not be the market leader in 3 years' time if they don't adopt, AI or all that sort of stuff. So I think that this idea of it's disruptive at the high end, can be scary because you probably live with it and you're about to retire and all that sort of stuff. This is why this idea of like reverse mentoring, we did a lot of reverse mentoring at Yum, which is we would mentor the younger people, but they would mentor us. And I think it goes back to being vulnerable, which is to say, look, I may not personally get AI, I may not have Copilot, and I may not have it write my speeches, but that doesn't mean, hey, as an organization, I want you to embrace it, and I want the organization at the lower levels to demonstrate to me how we can use it to be successful. So I think, again, you have to be vulnerable to say, look, I may not use it like you use it. I didn't grow up with it. I'm not growing up with it. We had a professor from ASU come and talk to the Aramark board recently about AI. And obviously, people at the end of their career can almost get out of their career without it. And it's actually not the people in the beginning of their career, because they're going to come into their careers, to your point. It's the people in the middle that are 20 years from retirement, but maybe 15 years from joining the workforce, that are going to have to learn new skills, and they're going to have to put their thinking caps on. Look, does it mean there won't be jobs lost? No, but there's jobs lost in every revolution.
It happens anyway. Yeah, exactly.
It happens in every revolution. Now, that also doesn't mean you can't have humanity when people walk out the door.
Yeah.
So, you know, we had a transformation at Yum. People lost their
Yeah.
jobs. I shut down things,
Yeah.
but you can do it with humanity, or you can
Yeah.
do it without it. And there's only one way to do it.
There is only one. So look, I know we're nearly at time, but I'm going to ask
Yeah.
you 3 questions. I want one line answers.
Yeah.
Leadership philosophy in 1 sentence.
Ability, giving ability opportunity.
Nice. A book or belief that changed your life.
It's Your Ship by Mike Abrashoff.
I thought you could say your book then. That would have been.
No, that would have been. No, honestly, this is my favorite book I've ever read. It's Your Ship, Mike Abrashoff. Go read it. It's brilliant.
Brilliant.
You can read
And
it in like 3 hours.
Last question. What do you want to be remembered for?
My legacy to be, I want to prove that good guys can come first.
Good guys can come first. I like that. Perfect. Greg, look, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. We'll keep in touch, all right? Cheers. Take care.
Pleasure,
Thank
mate.
you.
Yeah, keep well.
Bye-bye.
See you soon, mate. Bye.
Right, don't leave, Greg.